6 on.
Hello, and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast. It's a Wednesday night edition, Sunday game. Things are just messed up in November, but here we are. My name is Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped. I get to be your host, and I get to chat away to the man from Scotland Rugby News, Mr. Gavin Harper. Good evening, sir.
Evening, how are you? After a busy weekend?
Yeah, like an incredible weekend, and an absolute roller coaster that was close to being the perfect weekend. That was close to be. Who is it? If Carlsberg did weekends, other lagers are obviously available, but it was very, very close. Let's get into it. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. There are thousands of jobs across Scotland, and you can find the one for you, S1 Jobs. So go on, start your search tonight. My weekend started in Aberfeldy with our 10th anniversary dinner, which was unbelievable. And then you wake up, I got home at 1 o'clock and the alarm went off at 5 to get the wee into swimming. So I was a bit tired and emotional before the game even started. But there was just there's always a buzz at Murrayfield on match day, right? Always. And the All Blacks are not the best team in the world at the moment, and they haven't been for a while. But it still feels the All Black. I think only England really rival the All Blacks. And now people will disagree with me, and that's fine. But the All Blacks in Scotland, there's just so much to it. And then obviously there was a whole day expectation wrapped up in it. But I just felt the atmosphere was incredible. There was just an unbelievable buzz on Saturday at Murrayfield.
Yeah, and it probably went a wee bit flat during that first half at times. I think the early try, obviously...
The early try was tough, and then they sucked the entire atmosphere at the stadium with the try just before halftime.
Yeah, that felt like a real gut punch. Because I think, and I'm saying this elsewhere, 10-0 at halftime, back in the day as a Scotland fan, you were sitting saying, okay, well, we're going to need to kick 4 penalties to go back in front. But actually, I think we're now used to this team accumulating points quickly when they get on the front foot. So 10-0, I would have felt like, okay, they've missed a couple of opportunities. They've conceded a soft try, but other than that, there wasn't much in it. To go in 17-0 down, I think...
Especially when they only had 14 players on the pitch.
Yeah, and I think the yellow cards will be the bit that Scotland look back at and think, I've seen it written, will there ever be a better chance?
Well, that try, again, with 14 men, made it look like we had 2 players in the sin bin. It came around kind of easily. Like, had the whistle already gone? You never know. And those are kind of those championship minutes, just before a stoppage or just after something's happened. Yeah. But statistically, I think you're supposed to concede 7 when you go down a player. So that's like a 14-point swing.
Yeah.
Just before halftime. And I was with Roddy Deans, and I turned to him and said, like, if this continues, we're staring a 40-pointer in the face.
And it actually felt a bit like that without having felt like a 30 or a 40-point game.
I think it was close. It was a cracking game of rugby.
Yeah, it was a brilliant game.
And both teams butchered chances on the opposition line, and within seconds, like under a minute, were then at the other end. It was a really well balanced game, proper test match.
Yeah, it was a proper test match, but how good was that second half? And I think when Kyle Steyn scored, I think that's the most confident I've seen people at Murrayfield that there was a result about to unfold, that something was going to happen, because I can remember watching some really good All Blacks teams and some that have dug their way out of a hole like the one on Saturday, but they just felt like they were at 6s and 7s, and then when Wallace Satiti went to the bin, he thought, hang on a minute, this has got to be it. Like, they've passed up an opportunity when they got the yellow card in the first half. They took their chance when Arnie Sevilla was off. So then it was about, right, okay, can Scotland take another opportunity and go further in front? And I think if they'd got a score then, we might have been looking at something different. But yeah, it was not to be again. 120 years goes on, and
it's hard though, because you know, and the psychology of these things, that's what it was. Saturday was psychology. Like that Scotland didn't lose on Saturday because of Gregor Townsend. So the Tooney haters need to just pipe down on that one. I mean, that was, I think I've heard quite a number of people who have got much more rugby knowledge and experience than me saying that's as good as Scotland have played for a very long time. Now, there were obviously little moments where that didn't happen, but you look at fine margins at that level, and in a game that was so bad. I mean, the week before, I'm struggling to call that a test match because it wasn't a test.
Yeah.
It was an international, but it wasn't a test match. On Saturday was a test match. And while we all love Darcy more than we love anybody else, for him to get to the line and that ball be fumbled, I mean, we knew it wasn't a try. But for Damien McKenzie to finish the way Damien McKenzie did, now, I think Darcy Graham's a world-class player. But in that moment, just that fine margin, you know, we've all wished for 6 inches like that. If the ground had arrived a wee bit quicker, that's a try. Darcy Graham, and the place goes absolutely ballistic. That ball comes out to Damien McKenzie. There's 2 players coming across to cover, and you're thinking, just please put him in the first row. Please put him in the first row. And somehow or other, he produces and I've seen folk having a go at Blair, and I've seen, look, take your hat off to Damien McKenzie. He has, at the most pressured moment, he's delivered, and it was unreal. But there was still a chance. It still felt like, right, it's not done. He missed the conversion. They're still there.
I think that's it. I think, look, sometimes in rugby, I think we get hung up on looking for a negative. Let's look for somebody to blame or somebody to criticise. Like the Damien McKenzie finish is outrageous.
Aye, all right, journalist.
There is, yeah, fair point. But there is absolutely no reason that when he catches the ball, he's got no right to score from where he is. Like when he falls to the ground, you think, oh well, you know, he must be in touch somewhere. And I actually, until Scotland kicked the restart, I sort of was reluctant to put it in my notes, because I thought, well, the TMO's bound to find a toe on the touchline or something. So to score from there is outrageous. But you look at the impact of Blair Kinghorn and the impact that Cam Roigard had in stopping Darcy. And those are the moments. Now, that's the level of detail we've now got to analysing against these, gone are the days when Scotland hopefully are beaten by 30 or 40 points against a team like the All Blacks. But
and there was no chance to point the finger at the referee on Saturday, which I also liked. And do you know how good a game it was? Nobody even whispered Mexican wave. That's how good a game it was.
Like I've never heard Murrayfield. I think the 2018 game against England was total euphoria the last 2 or 3 minutes because Scotland were in front and couldn't be caught. I think the 2017 game when Doddie brought the match ball out was the most emotional I can remember an occasion at Murrayfield. But like just for pure atmosphere and noise, from about minute 45 to 60 was right up there with the best atmospheres I can remember. Look, I think from a Scottish, like Scotland will probably never have a better chance with the circumstances. But if you were attempting to take a positive from it, it's that the hope isn't lost, even when you go, ridiculously behind on the scoreboard. I think the frustrating part, though, is how much did the All Blacks actually create? 3 tries, 2 of them were probably completely avoidable. One of them's come from a moment of magic, Damien McKenzie kicking that at 50-22. And I asked Gregor after the game about the bench, and he kind of disagreed that the bench had done a good job. I just felt like when their subs came on, they made a real difference. I thought when Scotland's subs came on, it was back to that there being a drop in standard.
The All Blacks didn't take Roygaard off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how often do you see any player now, in a specialist position, hooker, tight head, scrum half, go in 80 minutes? And I thought he controlled the game well when they were on the front foot. I thought, Damien McKenzie, bringing Damien McKenzie off the bench was massive. They obviously had to do that because of injury, but they've got players like that who they know in tight games can have match-winning moments. I looked at that Scotland bench, and apart from maybe Tom Jordan, who obviously was thrown on because Finn got taken off, I'm not convinced who's providing you there with a match-winning moment in a test match against the All Blacks.
Yeah, when Jamie Dobie cut through, I tell you who did think he had, and that was Roddy Deans. He just about had kittens when Dobie went through there. But like talking about going for positives, and I deliberately did this off the back of stuff I saw on social media today about Scotland playing against Argentina at the weekend, and if it doesn't happen, Scotland are 8th in the world. New Zealand are 2nd in the world, and I think we're all fully understanding that South Africa are the best and will be very difficult to topple. It's going to take something. It almost feels like South Africa are only going to dip when it comes that transition, likely after the World Cup when Rassie maybe steps down, some of the senior players step down and they go through a period of transition. So from now until the World Cup, it feels like South Africa are the team to aim at. But Scotland, for result aside, performance on Saturday against number 2 in the world would have been hard to pick between the two.
Yeah, and I think I've seen people comment on our socials and elsewhere that probably before the game, the assumption was, or the expectation was, New Zealand would dominate up front, Scotland's backs would be probably better. But I actually felt like Scotland's pack more than held its own. And we'll maybe talk about Darcy Ray and all the stuff that went on there in a minute. But, there were some, like you look at Ben White had a chance to score maybe early in the second half. And I think if he spins and puts the ball down, it looks like he could reach the line. But
I couldn't believe he didn't reach. I watched it back with my wife, and I was like, I can't believe he didn't stretch there. It felt like the line was close enough.
And that's one. So then 2 phases after that, Schumann knocks on the line, and you think, like those are the moments. But Darcy's one in the corner. Blair Kinghorn had a bad drop when there was basically the whole left wing in front of him, and I think he had a 2-on-1 with Kyle Steyn outside him. So there were moments there for the backs that they didn't convert, but I thought one of the biggest positives has to be the performance of the pack, and I say that without getting carried away that this New Zealand team is not at the level of the Springboks, or I think even France and possibly Ireland, their packs are still better. But I thought, Scotland showed that they can kind of go toe-to-toe with one of the best teams, certainly, up front, which is, I thought Gregor Brown was really good at 6.
I think Roddy Deans, who was my
my +1 and knows a lot more about rugby than I'll ever know, and certainly about back row. And he was raving about Brown, Fagerson, Dempsey. He really liked that back row, and I thought all three of them. Dempsey had a few kind of standout moments, probably wishing he was just a yard quicker I mean, when Go Gadget arm goes out and he reins that ball in, you're thinking, go, somebody get on his shoulder, somebody get on his shoulder. Gilco almost didn't get his name mentioned in commentary, but put in an unbelievable shift. Doesn't carry, but he's so busy, ruck clearing, defensive, organising, line out, but hardly got his name mentioned. Scotty Cummings hit a couple of lines, but even I thought the work of the front five, they were really industrious. Set piece was decent. When George came on, there was an overthrow, a line out, which was I think that was just a breakdown in communication more than anything. And then Suz coming on, HIA back on, and now he's not right, just makes a mockery of the whole thing. But anyway, that's another day. But I think you're right. There was a feeling like we might get beat up a little bit, and that didn't happen. And then when the replacements came on, yes, I get what you mean. It's a decision of, are we better having a fresh someone than a tired, better player? And no one knows. That's a gut. I always do wonder about decisions being made in a box rather than on a touchline. But that's not going to change. But some of those decisions will be made by data and the science, but some of it will be a gut, right? It's time to make a change.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I mean. Like Jack Dempsey looked like, for me, he was Scotland's best player on the pitch. He looked like an Australian who wanted to prove a point against New Zealand.
What do you mean Australian? He's a Scotland international.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And then for him to come off and Josh Bayliss, who I like, to go on, it just didn't feel like a Josh Bayliss game. And I was surprised.
I wondered though. I thought that was a bit of guesswork, right? It's getting loose, potentially yellow card. Like, can we be quicker? I thought that was an attempt at pace.
I think so. I think that you're probably right. I just don't think it worked, and the flow of the game had probably gone against Scotland when Bayliss came on, so he didn't really have much impact. I think there's an interesting point here from Josh. Brown and Dempsey are best players against the All Blacks. I'd agree with that, probably with Kyle Steyn. We really missed a Jackal presence. I probably agree with that. I wonder.
I tell you, a Jackal presence. Ardi Savia is a Jackal presence.
And then they brought Karifi off the bench, and like the two of them are just, like I said last week, like dynamite to shift the two of them. They're unbelievable.
Josh, I don't think I disagree with you. I think it was a bit like I was saying about Gav's substitution theory. I think it was a realization that physicality was going to be important. And there were a couple of breakdowns where there was a Jackal opportunity, just that fraction slow. But I think it was weighing up, right? We're willing to concede that with the carries that we'll get from these three and the weight that they'll add and the line out options that they'll give.
Yeah,
I think that was maybe where we were.
Yeah, I think what's interesting this week, and I know we're talking about last week here, but I think the balance of that back row that started against the All Blacks is actually better suited to playing Argentina, who don't tend to pick a 7, and Montoya does all their scavenging. So it's a weird one because there's options there. If Gregor Brown goes into the second row, somebody like Jamie Ritchie or Andy Onyama Christie can start. Rory Darge would be the obvious Jackal if you wanted an out-and-out 7. But I think if you're playing Argentina, I think again you want physicality. So possibly you go Brown again.
I'd be surprised if Gregor makes many changes from the weekend.
Yeah, I think I would too. I think it's not, look, there's a Tonga game coming up that I think we can assume we'll see changes again.
What makes you say that, Gavin?
Well, I mean, they've kept a squad of nearly 40 players, and I suppose we're going to have to give them something to do. So, and Tonga aren't very good, so
and I see on Scotland Rugby News social media that we're not any wiser about Finn.
Well, it's funny that, I mean, Peter de Villiers basically said Finn's trained fully today, and Xander has also trained fully. The word of caution there, I think, would be Xander trained fully in the week of the USA game, then felt a problem with his knee. So it'll be really interesting. Gregor Townsend said after the game on Sunday, that he didn't expect Xander to be available or Xander to play against Argentina. More likely he would play against Tonga. Why would you bother? I'm not entirely sure. But I think if Xander's available, Scotland will try and get him involved. I mean, and there's another point about the bench. If you need impact, the guy's not played for 7 months, so he might give you half an hour.
Yeah, so the Boan Venter situation of playing half an hour. Whenever, and there are exceptions to this rule, but whenever I was coaching and I had somebody that Xander, I would prefer to start Xander for a few reasons. One, the starting team is always the most organised.
Yep.
So that means you can protect and give that person the best opportunity to perform. The other thing is, if he only lasts 5 minutes, then you put somebody on. Whereas if you put him on and he only lasts 5 minutes and Darcy sat down or whoever sat, they have to go back on again.
Yeah.
So I always preferred to go, right, we'll start with that. Now, there were obviously, and I never coached at this level and never had a player as Xander Fagerson, but if I then think, well, is it worth risking him and play him against Tonga? And Franco's probably quite happy with that because then he's ready to go for Franco. But I don't know. I think if there's going to be a change, then that's maybe it. Xander comes in. It would be hard. I thought Darcy Ray, well, he's not played that many games for Scotland, but that has to be his best game for Scotland.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I think the bit for me was, and we can talk about refereeing and scrummaging interpretations and all that stuff.
No, we can't. You can, I can't.
But yes, exactly. But he never went hurtling backwards. It wasn't like, God, we've plucked this guy off the street and he's really struggling. He looked like an international prop. And I say that because sometimes when we take Xander off against the big packs, South Africa, France, if we take him off at all, sometimes the guy who comes on hasn't always looked at that level. So I think almost in one game, Darcy Ray said, well, actually, guys, I'm here and I can do a job here. I'm not Xander Fagerson, but at the same time, Darcy Ray's not claiming to be Xander. So,
but there's all Darcy's history is difficult because we've only got 2 teams. The opportunities for him to play and to rack up appearances is a bit more challenging, and he's had a run because of WP finishing and Hilly being injured, so Darcy gets to play a chunk of rugby.
But also he's 31. If we're talking long term, he's 31. I think in next month, which you might, people might look at and say, "Oh, hang on a minute, this guy's 31 and he's only played that was his first start against America, second against the All Blacks." But like you mentioned WP, he was going till he was 38, 39. And Darcy hasn't played an awful lot of rugby over the first maybe part of his career. So there's a chance that if he can cement himself in the Edinburgh team, I think there's a real opportunity that he becomes part of that Scotland squad and gets decent minutes. I think just 2 points here. Comment on the defence for the first try, terrible. Like that is terrible, and I'm not sure what Scott Cummings and Ewan Ashman are doing, but to switch off at either side of a ruck like that,
and Stuart, I don't necessarily disagree with Gav. The way rucks are so tidy in international rugby that when Stuart, when you and I or Gav are coaching or playing, you know, they're a bit messier. They probably take a bit longer, and there's time to get, you know, the language tends to be guard the player closest to the ruck, shield the person, and then and there's time to get filled in. No one was. I thought they might have come back because I wasn't sure that he was picking the ball up from in front. And I thought we might have been coming back for that. So there was a few things in it. And I'm not sure. It's difficult because the video analysis, in fact, that's maybe not true because the All Blacks have played a lot of games and these players have played a lot of games. I'm guessing the video analysis is Cam Roygaard's at 9, Bowden Barrett, the backline they've got, that ball's not going to be picked and gone. But it absolutely is a brain fart. And the other bit to the defensive structure, because things are so like rugby league, but without being 10 metres back, the olden days, or not even that long ago, of having the 9 in the boot position just in behind, even that feels like it's gone because number 9's got the ability to come round and then try and fly for an interception or to make that, put somebody under pressure. So we've kind of lost that ruck defense structure that clubs repeat on a Tuesday and a Thursday in preparation for the game, and it's much more about spreading, filling the field and line speed to take away their time and their sort of ability to come onto the ball. So, but like gutting, and the way just opened up, you know, we were not slow to react because it just happened. We reacted as quickly as we could. It's just he was so far in front.
Do you know the other part I think that was doubly frustration? And I always talk about backing up mistakes. So Scott Cummings and Ewan Ashman have made a mistake, but the best teams, and if that's what we're talking about Scotland trying to become, that's how we should measure them. The best teams salvage that somewhere. So I still think it's recoverable when Josh Lord makes the break. I think Finn and Blair Kinghorn have got to do a lot better at not making it. I mean, because they basically make Josh Lord's decision for him, and he gives the offload when he does. I think that was possibly poor. I didn't think Blair Kinghorn had a great game. I think Gregor spoke after the game, about Blair having kind of had a strange summer where he came back from the Lions, he got married straight away, then he was straight into it with, I think Toulouse needed him at the start of the season. So I think it's been a bit kind of all over the place at the start. There's a question here. Any thoughts on replacing Kinghorn with Kyle Rowe for this weekend?
No.
I don't think he will, but I think if there was a change to be made, I think Tom Jordan would be possibly his pick at 15 if there was a change. But I think, again, probably contradicting myself, Tom Jordan is also an ideal guy for the bench. So, even if Finn's not fit,
what you're telling me is, Mr. Journalist, that you're just going to say everything so at least someone is right.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'll tell you one thing I will tell you is that I think if Finn's not fit to play, I don't think Tom Jordan starts at 10 because of his versatility for the bench.
Alan, my bit on Blair Kinghorn was that wasn't his best performance, and I don't think anybody's going to claim that it was. The bigger frustration for me, and this is something we've said about Scotland and Edinburgh historically, that Duan and Darcy don't get enough touches on the ball.
Yeah,
I thought the industry from Stain and Darcy was excellent on Saturday and their number of involvements that I can't pretend I know. Maybe Top of the Moon or someone's able to come and help me out with that. But we didn't get many involvements from Blair, and certainly in an attacking sense. And that's a frustration because he is so deadly. I'm not sure what his summer has got to do with it. If that can't be parked and move on and play for Scotland at Murrayfield against the All Blacks, then I'm not sure what we're getting at there. But Blair Kinghorn would have to do something absolutely drastic for him not to be pulling on the 15 jersey if I was picking a team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think just another one here. We do forget that this was the first.
Yeah, I'm not really having that either. I'm sorry, I'm not really having that. Right. There are absolute basic. You're not telling me he's come in and completely changed what's going on. You're right, it is the first, but he's only been in the door 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the other thing to say about this is part of the reason Lee Radford got the job was because he's had this relationship with Steve Tandy where he basically was in shadowing. Look, I think a lot of the things that Steve Tandy coaches as a defence coach are principles that Lee Radford follows. We were chatting earlier to Rory Hutchinson about, we obviously can talk about the club impact that Lee Radford had at Northampton and what he's been like with Scotland. That the piece will be out tomorrow night. But yeah, I'm not convinced that new defence coach was the reason for you called it a brain fart earlier, which is a pretty accurate.
It's also like, yes, he's a new defence coach, but it's not like he's at a club and he's only had an hour and a half on a Tuesday and an hour and a half on a Thursday. Like, they've been together. Remember, they started this before the window opened, so they were out in the garden practicing this before they were able to come in and open the windows. So they've had 3 weeks. If that's time on task, and I don't mean just on the training field, that's analysis and video and meetings, and so I'm not. I get your point, Alan, and I think you're probably being kind, but I'm not really having that. I think I take my hat off to Lord and the All Blacks for training and playing at an intensity and maybe being a little bit sharper off the back of their year that they've had. And we've just got to accept that sometimes in that pressure environment, at the speed the game's going, mistakes happen. It won't happen against Argentina because they've now videoed it. Argentina have looked at it and went, right, Scotland will not give us that chance again. So I don't think it'll happen. But it was another one of those fine margins. Like, looking at the incidents across the 80 minutes at the weekend and jumping back to comments, yes, the second half was incredible, but there was moments that had us up on our feet and then had us head in their hands.
Okay.
And New Zealand were the same, because I was about 3 seats in front of Scott Robertson, and I turned around to watch him a couple of times, and he behaves like a fan.
Yeah, I think.
Listen, George. Right, nobody's dressing anything up. I don't think. New Zealand are the second best team in the world, and Scotland could have beat them and didn't. But I don't. I hope you don't mean Scotland performed well, but we lost the game, and ultimately we would all take winning ugly, right, against the All Blacks, certainly, because we've never done it before. And the against 14, I completely agree. It's so difficult. There are teams like South Africa, when they go down to 14 players, you often don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say
because of the style of their play.
I think if you were picking players to lose, like Ardy Savea is a bad one because he's your captain, but he's a flanker.
They lost him at a good time, though.
Yeah, they did. So if you've lost both flankers at varying points and a winger, I think those are possibly the 3 easiest positions to cover with the players the All Blacks have at their had at their disposal on the weekend. And I just like they're a team that if they go down a man, again, as you say, you don't tend to notice a massive drop. Like, I was astounded when I saw Lud de Jager had been sent off for South Africa and then saw the final score, like I thought I had read two totally different things. Like that result is like a huge statement from the box.
I think South Africa could beat quite a lot of teams with 13 players.
Yeah, I actually sent somebody a message today saying I wouldn't put money on Italy beating South Africa this weekend if South Africa had 2 red cards. And that's, with Italy having just beaten Australia. I think, I totally get George's point that we can, we played half a game against 14 and didn't win. I think that is the frustration. That is where this sense of shoulda, woulda, coulda comes from.
George, ultimately that's professional sport, right? Yeah. You're hacked off we didn't win. I think we all are. Because we've become so conditioned to it, we have to dress it up, because otherwise you don't end up looking like me and be old and miserable, right? That's just kind of how it goes. But there was so much to be excited about. But we've said that 1,000 times before. We weren't excited about America, and people tell me, "Oh, but he played well," and he did. Yeah, it was against America, and it wasn't a test match. Saturday was a test match. It's like hearing the football manager every week saying, "Oh, we've learned lessons," and then the next week they've either learned more lessons or they're still learning. That's the bit that irks, right? That happened against Argentina. Can we win? Putting that kind of whole or 80 minutes for the first half to go down 17-0, we didn't really have a right to win. The Scotland team that came out at halftime, I would love to have been in that changing room at halftime, because what came out was a completely, right at the beginning of this, I don't know if you joined us at the start, George, but I think I said the word psychology at least twice. Like the psychology of that performance on Saturday is a thesis for somebody that's got letters after their name.
Yes, and George is back to say yes. Which I think is
George, but you're also taking selfies in the gym, so didn't give me that.
Just very quickly, because we had a few comments last week from the Latman, who is back, talking about the defence. Thought the defence was good overall. 5 meter, the 5 meter defence, like through pretty much the whole game, was outstanding.
I thought it was good from both teams.
Yeah, it was, and then Alan has come back. Hang on a minute. Yeah. So there we go. We've discussed the defence. Blair Stewart's in with a view on Darcy Ray, which I think sums up how I feel about the way Darcy played pretty well.
Right, hang on. Blair, do you know Darcy really well that his nickname is Dinky, or is that like predictive? I'm interested to know that. And you're right, he did an awesome job. And I think Darcy is he just quietly goes about his business for both Edinburgh and now Scotland, and people talk about him, I think, because we don't really know him, because we've not seen him tested, because he's never had that opportunity.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
He stood up and he's performed in a way that to him that's just how you do it. That's just what you do. You just work hard and you give everything you've got, and you hope that it's going to stand up against two world-class looseheads, and I think he did that. And I think a lot of the boys did. Finn getting hurt early really worried me, and that he got strapped, and then a few minutes later he got strapped again, and I thought, oh no, this is not good. But then he puts in that ridiculous spiral through the eye of a needle, and you're just thinking, we're in different gravy here. And you and I were both at the squad session on Friday, Gav, and we watched the kickers, the All Blacks kickers, stand. I think they had some money on it, and they were trying to get the ball closest to the corner flag.
Yeah.
And none of those things that the All Blacks did on Saturday happened by accident. Damien McKenzie, you can see clips of it on social media, but that's obviously just what people want us to see. But the top teams are practicing all those ridiculous finishes on crash mats and diving it in and, twisting and turning. And I don't know if you saw, there was a clip today of Scott Robertson coaching the offload.
Yeah.
And and I'm claiming this one because I used to do a handling practice where the players weren't allowed to communicate, and so the player had to sight the support runner, and that was what he was doing. They weren't allowed to chat. They were falling forward and offloading, and they had to sight the target. And the
Imagine
detail.
you coaching a training session where you couldn't speak. Were you allowed to speak when the
Oh
players
no,
were
no!
doing this?
Whoa! Yeah, come on. Come on. It just the detail that that kick from Damien McKenzie that had us all off our seat. The only thing that's different is that he did it in front of 67,500 folk with a scoreboard. Damien McKenzie's hit that kick I don't know how many times. I remember Marcus de Rolo tell me about his time in France and saying, now his name's going to me head, All Black scrum half, Brian Kelleher. And he said, at the end of training sessions, Brian Kelleher would be picking the ball up out an imaginary scrum and drilling it in behind the opposition left winger.
Yeah.
And he just ball after ball after ball after ball. And when he did it on the Saturday, he'd done it however many 100 times during the week. So all that happened on the Saturday was there was more players on the pitch. Those offloads, Lord making that run and the offload, none of those things happened by accident. Where I thought, and we've not actually mentioned him really, I did, Kyle Steyn, his work with the ball in the air,
yeah,
and to claim our own kickoff, that's detail. Now he's done that 1,000 times in training, and the way the Kiwis are very good in the air, and I thought we put them under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think,
and that could be really useful this week against Argentina, because I'm feared that while we saw an amazing game of rugby at the weekend, we might see an amazing game of kicking this weekend coming.
We will. They'll go back to, Chris Cantelli was great in Cardiff. I would be stunned if he goes again, purely because I think they've got other 10s, Carreras, namely, in their squad who could possibly put Scotland under a bit more pressure under the high ball. Just before we move on from All Blacks chat, do you think the fact that we get to play them every year from now on helps? So I suppose the bit from this is that the Nations Cup, Scotland will play New Zealand basically every year.
I hate it, Josh.
Bruce hates it. I'm not sure about the format of the tournament, but I think it does help. I think it makes them more normal. And it stops...
Which is rubbish. Normal is rubbish.
Normal is rubbish, but normal also...
I'm sick of it, Josh. There's too many internationals. I would like it to be fresher. They know each other too much. There's far too much analysis. I would rather there was fewer internationals rather than more. And I like that we didn't play them every year.
And Bruce, if you could go back to the Four Nations, you would.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I watched The Grudge on TV last night. I didn't even know it was a TV show. I've read the book, but the Grudge documentary was on, and I caught the last 20 minutes of it, and I made a big long list of things that were in 1990 that are no longer. So be prepared for the longest Facebook post you have ever seen in your entire life, with Bruce wishing he was living again.
Yeah. I'll not tell you what age I was in March 1990.
I get what you mean, Josh, but I didn't want the All Blacks to be normal. I didn't want it to be any less exciting. The wee Bruce getting up in the middle of the night to watch games that were on at 3:00 in the morning because everything's happened in the afternoon. I miss that. So yeah, I'm old and grumpy, and the things I want I'm never going to get, but and that's true, Joe. But that's what we like. In my lifetime, I've seen Hibs win a Scottish Cup. I've seen Scotland beat the Springboks. I've seen them beat Australia. I've seen them beat England. I saw them win a Grand Slam. I've seen them win a 5-8. Like I've seen a lot of amazing things. So if Hibs win the Scottish Cup again, it's still going to be special. But I saw them win it for the first time in 116 years. You're right. Ireland beat New Zealand, and then they could do it again. When Roger Bannister broke the mile in 4 minutes, I think 15 people did it in the following 12 months because somebody showed them it could be done.
Yeah.
If and when Scotland beat the All Blacks, after that, it can be done because it has been done. But at the moment, for whatever the reason is, and I'm back to psychology again, we can't beat the All Blacks.
Yeah. I think,
and somebody, Gregor, might watch this and go, Bruce, we can, and I don't disagree, but we haven't.
yeah, I think that's it. The evidence is not there that we can do it, which is possibly part of the problem. The team we can beat is Argentina, and
Right.
they,
Now, this is an interesting one because there's a fair bit of local bias creeping into some of the chat on social media, and I see our pal, I was going to say your pal, but that makes it sound quite accusatory. Rob Robertson has brought someone out for Derek Douglas saying that if Scotland didn't beat Argentina at the weekend, Tooney must go, which is absolutely bonkers.
yeah, I think that's, for me, that's nonsense because Gregor's just signed a new contract. Look, if he loses games against New Zealand or Argentina, Scottish Rugby are not going to turn around and say, thanks very much, Mr. Townsend, but all that hope we had going into the 2027 World Cup, we're just going to disperse with that and off you go. Like that's
but also, like on the rankings, we're 8th in the world. Argentina are 6th. So if it comes to a playoff, we're playing Australia. Now, if we're going into Australia, 7th against 8th, you fancy your chances. 8th against 6th, you still fancy your chances, but there's nothing that says we should beat Argentina at the weekend.
No, I agree, and I think we get carried away because New Zealand last week was the big high, and then Argentina somehow feels like maybe historically it was a step down. It's not like that.
No.
I think we need to get rid of that idea entirely. They beat the Lions, they've beaten the Springboks, they've beaten Australia, and they've beaten New Zealand.
But we're also a big deal now. Like teams have to beat us. New Zealand didn't. It's not been that long ago that New Zealand didn't play their full team against us because they were saving their full team for England the next week or France next week. Or Argentina are coming fully loaded and they want to win at Murrayfield.
100%. And I think if Argentina maybe looked at their tour schedule, they may have left one or two out at the weekend in Cardiff. By the way, the state of Wales, like, I think I saw some quotes from Steve Tandy after the game, and I always found Steve Tandy to be a really sort of good guy to deal with, always gave us time and was honest.
Where's this going?
And he said after the game, I think that's the line in the sand, like, this is an eye-opener for where Wales are. Like, we're now talking, so the Scotland game on Sunday has ramifications if Scotland win, or either way, really, for the World Cup draw. Wales need to not lose to Japan to not fall out the second pot of World Cup seats. So I think, like we talk about, the USA game wasn't a test match. I'm not sure how much of that game at the weekend Gregor and Gav Vaughan as analysts and all the coaches are sitting studying, and how much of the Rugby Championship forms the analysis for Argentina, because without being disparaging to Wales, they're miles off it, and I really worry what happens to Wales now. They've not got Jack Morgan, who's by a good distance their best player.
That was probably the sorest bit of the weekend.
100%.
That Jack, because he is immense, and I feel for him that he's come around at Welsh rugby at this time when he's a British Lion, and could be part of a great and unfortunately he's not, and his win record as a Wales player is looking like it could be really poor for somebody who is such a good player. But I take no delight. I can't work out why people do. I take no delight in Wales struggling. To me, a high tide lifts all boats. The Argentinian bit as well, that for them to climb the world rankings, they're a fair bit behind France. But what they don't want Australia and Scotland getting any closer. And talking about World Cup and pots and all that kind of thing, there's a need for them to keep going. So while these games are friendlies, there's actually quite a lot riding on them, and never knowing what's going to come in the World Cup. Argentina recording a win against Scotland is another, right? Not even just a win against Scotland, a win against Scotland at Murrayfield. Now for Scotland, at the start of the autumn tests, and I don't know where people go. If we finish with 2 wins out of 4, I think we'll be really disappointed.
Yeah.
The best we can now do is obviously 3 out of 4 with a narrow loss to New Zealand. 3 out of 4 with a narrow loss to New Zealand feels a hell of a lot better than 2 wins and 2 losses. No matter how we perform or how close the score is against Argentina, that is going to come down to professional sport is win or lose. I don't think the team will change much, and I don't know if it deserves to. I do wonder, Darge has been captain and co-captain, and I do wonder if Darge comes in.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sure about that. I don't really see any of the other forwards necessarily starting. The backs, I think Gregor seems like he's happy with 6-2, which would make me think that Tom Jordan and Jamie Dobie stay on the bench, with Dobie starting against Tonga and maybe George Horn coming back in, or I'm not sure.
I think just very quickly on that, because I was debating this with somebody earlier. If you were to make a change at 9 and Dobie starts at 9, do you have to ditch the 6-2?
Well, either that or maybe George Horn. But yeah, I know what you mean. But if Ben White went on the bench, Dobie would go to the wing. If Blair goes down, Tom Jordan comes on. If Finn goes down, Tom Jordan comes on. If Sione goes down, Tom Jordan comes on, Tom Jordan goes to 15 and Blair goes on to ding-a-ling for. I would be surprised. I'd be surprised if Ben White's not in the 23.
Yeah, I would too. And I think it's an interesting point though about the makeup of the bench. I just think, I think Tom Jordan's versatility actually probably lends itself to. Look, he couldn't play scrum half, so you couldn't go 7-1 just with Tom Jordan. But it definitely gives you enough cover that your other player could be a specialist scrum half, providing Dobie, can cover the wing. And even if Dobie got injured and then Darcy had to go off, you've still got enough bits, I think, that can move about.
Yeah, totally. I think there is, and they're all good rugby players. I thought Hutch was good. Yeah, I'm just gutted. I'm absolutely gutted.
I thought Rory Hutchinson was really good just on that point. I thought him and Sione looked like a proper partnership. I think that has given Gregor probably another headache about the pecking order, the 13th.
Yeah, but I think the beauty of that is, and I said this to somebody, that we didn't miss Hugh Jones and Duan. Like, I don't think anybody was sitting there going, "Oh, I wish Hugh Jones had been here or Duan was playing."
Yeah.
Now, if they'd been playing, I don't think we would be saying, "Oh, I wish Rory Hutchison or Kyle Steyn was here." So,
yeah.
But I just think the two of them performed high enough that it wasn't a lot. Xander, possibly. Like you would say Xander would have made an impact, but Darcy did really well. So I don't really want to take away from Darcy. So fast forward to the Six Nations. I think the exciting bit is Gregor should and could pick from, well, who's playing well. If Hugh Jones is tearing up trees, then okay, Rory, Jonesy's shaded it because, or then you maybe weigh up, right, Rory Hutchison's doing it at the top of the Premiership and Hugh Jones is doing it in 4th at Glasgow.
Yeah, I mean,
but then I find, like Tom Jordan, if all of a sudden Tom Jordan's tearing it up, well, what happens there? If Duan starts scoring tries and building on that all-round performance, the ball he gave against USA, where potentially not that long ago he would have run that himself. right, who's playing? Right, Kyle Steyn, you're on the right wing. Right, Darcy's the one who that competition. Dobie, Ben White. George Turner starts. Harlequins have an upturn, and George Turner's part of that. I think we're at a point now that I'm not sure we've been at for quite a number of years.
I agree,
depth.
and I think you can see that when you look at who's not in the 23. You've mentioned a couple of guys, but like Jamie Ritchie
Jamie Ritchie will be
doesn't.
gutted.
Jamie
Absolutely
Ritchie,
gutted.
Andy Onyema Christie, these guys are international caliber players. They're not making the 23. Cam Redpath, Cameron Henderson aren't even in the
Can't even
wider
get the
squad.
squad. Yeah,
So
still
you're
baffling.
you're 100% right with the in some areas the depth is better than it's ever been. I still think there are positions that you look at and think, oh, hang on a minute, like if Pierre got injured.
Yeah, but that's kind of. I mean, that there's only really South Africa can go to the well. If you take out Pierre, world class, Xander, world class, Finn, world class, but so you take out your bit. Of course, you're going to be weaker.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it goes. I heard football pundits talking the other night. Oh, if Erling Haaland goes doing Man United, wouldn't he be as good? Oh, really? That's some in-depth analysis.
I
Like,
mean, Man United might get even better because Erling Haaland plays for Man City, but
oh
yeah,
well, sorry.
yeah.
There you go. Like, just blew my mind. Like, if the best player who scored 23 goals and the second top goal scorer for Man City's got 2, they're going to be oh thanks for that insight. Like, that's really useful.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you take out your better players, of course. But it's good that we've got so many good players. And this Sunday games are always a pain in the tonsils. They're never the same. But I hope it's packed. I hope the atmosphere is what it is. I hope people can sense something in the way they did last week, because I think that's needed. And you and I were both in the stadium. The anthem was pretty spectacular. Well, it's always spectacular, but it felt like it upped at the weekend. I see Blair saying the players had said how incredible it was.
Yeah.
It was the moments where they just silenced us, where they just took the wind out of the crowd. Must give away teams such a lift. But I hope we're not sitting here next week talking about negatives. I hope we're sitting here talking about a win, a performance, and 2 or 3 people who have, selfishly, I'd like it to be people like Darcy and Dobie, and but hopefully Finn conducts the audience and conducts the orchestra, and the front row don't concede any penalties at scrum time, and yeah, exciting.
It is. So we started this whole thing almost an hour ago talking about your busy weekend. Talk to me about, you mentioned Aberfeldy, you're obviously at Murrayfield on Saturday. Tell me a bit more, because I heard you on TNT Sports, which was a wee bit of a shock on Sunday. How was Kingsholm?
Yeah, so got in the car on Saturday night after the All Blacks game, drove to Kelso. Doug Stephen, who's the owner of the Doddy Tractor, and I then drove to Preston. We got head down in Preston, and then we went down to Gloucester on Sunday morning, arrived at Kingsholm. Never been before, never been to Gloucester. And Kingsholm, the 2 guys on security desk knew everybody that was coming and going. The marketing girl who was doing the events knew everybody and all the players, the security guys also. It was just a real club atmosphere. And then I'd been asked to be there at 4, and then I got a message to say, oh, can you be there at 3? Because there's a tie presentation. So all the players last year who were involved were given ties. This year, all the players who were playing for the first time were being given ties. And then Luke Pearce, who'd been in Georgia the day before, 6-hour car journey to Tbilisi to fly across. He was tired when he arrived, but wanted to be there, and God love him. I spoke to Nick Mullins, the commentator. I spoke to Jill Douglas, and then they started listing all these names and for the ties, and Ed Slater's family and Lindsay Burrow and the kids were giving out the ties, and then they read my name. So I got presented with a 745 tie, which still makes me quite emotional, because they see it as everybody contributing, everybody involved. So because I was going to be the stadium announcer, I got presented with a tie. So that sort of kicked me into touch pretty early. Bumped into Joe Marler, Ben Youngs, all good guys. Jim Hamilton was there. Ben Weir, Doddy's boy, was, let's put this politely, nervous.
How good was it? How fitting did it feel that he
Just
scored at the end? Like
and you saw his reaction. You saw how much it meant to him, and
yeah,
everybody just made a big deal of him and made him feel, it was just magic. And then you go out, and I bumped into people I knew, Rob Drury Dryden, who did the cycle when I went on that cycle trip from Murrayfield round all the Six Nations stadiums to Rome. Rob appeared at the sideline. He's down there. Great to see him. I got a nice chat with Laura Wright, who did the song before the game.
yeah.
I then got to announce when Mike Tyndall knocked the ball on. I shouted "Taxi for Tyndall, taxi for Tyndall," and that got a bit of a giggle through the crowd. I'm not sure he was overly impressed by it, but
I'm sure he'll put that to the back of his mind as he continues his R360 planning.
Yeah, it was class. Jamie Jones Buchanan, just the loveliest of guys. I got on really well with Wayne Godwin, little daft leaguey. I spoke to quite a few of the boys. Kylie he's keen to come to Edinburgh. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like do you know it was
hopefully Kylie Luluai's lining up Edinburgh for the next 745 game rather than waiting on a call for Sean Everett.
Well, I don't know, because he's still he's got it. Danny Brough, class, unbelievable.
Yeah. Actually, some of the Union boys were chucking it about a bit, but I think the phrase that was used by Nick Mullins on commentary was that Ben Youngs had summered well.
Yeah, he's enjoying himself. I mean, Keith Senior, I didn't get within 10 meters of him because I was scared he was going to rip my arms out my socket and eat me. Like Keith Senior, lovely guy, but I reckon there'd be Union clubs could chuck contracts at some of those league boys.
Yeah, some of them still looked
unreal.
Of them still looked really handy. And
Danny Brough is class.
Yeah.
I watched the warm up, and the league boys, the way they warmed up was so sharp but so effortless.
Yeah.
The way they distribute the ball off both hands, and huge men with the softest of hands who can spin off either side or offload or one-handed. Incredible skill. And the game was close. For Ben to score at the end, the whole place went nuts, and I was really chuffed for him, and I got to speak to him after, and I was on the pitch at the end, and we had a sing song, and it was just really, really lovely. And then after, I think they spoke about on commentary up on the gantry and the hospitality boxes, there was quite a lot of people who suffer from MND and their families. So I went up, and there was 2 or 3 people that I know, Mark Williams and Steph Williams, from Wales, from Abertillery. They were there. Got quite emotional seeing them. Last time I saw them was when we stopped in Wales on the way to Rome. So I'm in touch with them a lot. It was great to see them, and just incredible. And the atmosphere after was really lovely. People had a real peaks and troughs. Like, people were so happy, and then you remembered what it was for and why you were there. And I, to be honest, I felt massive guilt on the way down. At the end of the game, I had a massive wobble on the pitch of guilt because I was having such a good time, and I was so happy. And I was like, this is because my mate died MND. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. And then I got over myself because Doddy always said, no, it has to be fun. Raising awareness and raising money has to be fun. I'm getting emotional as I'm talking about it, because I had this there's 9,000 folk, 10,000 folk laughing at my stupid comment, and I'm getting to meet Joe Marler and Ben Youngs, and I'm going for a beer with them now, and I had this massive wave of like, this, what are you doing? But it was a massive life highlight for me. I got some lovely messages today, and I've had the photographers have been sending me pictures, and it was everybody. When you go to a game, they're against them. But you went there, and they were against them, but actually we're all there for the same thing. I don't know if I've explained that well, but And it's Big Handsome Sean, who helps me with my pods and stuff like that, and Fill Your Boots, and who he sent me a message saying it's like the rugby's version of Soccer Aid.
100%. That's exactly what I would have described it as. And I think, to give you a minute, talking about like the guilt element, like all those people, Nick Mullins, Luke Pearce, Joe Marler, like Joe Marler's probably could do a break after being on everybody's telly for the last however many weeks. But all these people want to be there for the same reason. And I think in the day and age of professional sport, and it's rare that you get that. And it felt like watching a club game, where the ones were playing the twos, but you were actually all raising money for a worthy cause, and obviously it is a very worthy cause. You cut across commentary at one point to tell everybody the sort of fundraising total for the night. What we didn't, those of us watching at home didn't get an update. So where did the sort of fundraising finish?
When we finished, so right at the end of the game, I got to make an announcement on the pitch here, back of my neck or standing up. It got to 111,745. So somebody rounded it up to 745. And their target was 100 grand. Yeah. And by the time we got to kick off, I'd been told it's just over 60. And then when they radioed to get an update, it had gone to 73. So I think at kickoff it was at 73. And then during the game, I can't remember how quick, but very quickly it hit 100. And then it was, right, we've hit 100, the target's now 120. But the jerseys that the players wore are now online on auctions. Yeah. If you want to buy Joe Marler's jersey, you can go on the 745 website, and the auctions on there, you can buy all the players' shirts. And Billy 12 Trees came up to me after. He's nursing a wee bit of an injury, and he's still playing rugby. So his coach was in the stand. So he was like, he was coaching, and then he went on at the end, and he got pelters for it. But he was really lovely. He came over and spoke to me. Big Carl Hogg was coaching the Union team. I've known Hoggy for a long, long time. We had a little moment before the game.
I presume that was all his influence that they scored driving lineouts.
Well, I think that the boys loved that. Like Jim wasn't watching at one point, and they were like, Jim, because it was like time to roll the subs on for the driven line out. The league boys weren't impressed by that, but just lots of really lovely guys. Like Matt Banahan had been coaching Gloucester Hartbury at Harlequins. They'd got on the bus and come straight up.
And some of the players had come back as well.
They were on the stand. They all came back together. Mo Hunt managed to avoid me, which I was slightly disappointed about. But Tom Wood, lovely guy, big lad. Mark Atkinson, big mates with Ed Slater. And it was his wife who was the event organizer, the incredible Lydia, who put together. She works with Gloucester Foundation. So, like just unreal. And the Youngs, Tom Youngs, I've got to know over the last wee while. Just loved being away from the farm for a while to smack into some people.
And there was chat, I believe, of possibly the 745 game being in Edinburgh next year.
Yeah, that's all way above my pay station. I've got no idea, because the Kingsholm, there was Leicester fans there, there was Gloucester fans there, there was rugby league fans there. If it comes to Edinburgh, that was almost 10,000 folk at Kingsholm. The Hive's not got 10,000 seats, and you wouldn't want it to be a sellout, because then you're missing out on people's money. So I don't know what stadium you can then go to. There's a romantic bit of me would love it to be at Melrose, but the infrastructure in Melrose, the travel and transport and the hospitality, and it would take a lot, and I'm not sure that doing it this time of year in Scotland works either, because the Hive and Murrayfield's all dressed up for the Six Nations, so for Autumn Test. So yeah, I'll let others. I'll try and be there. I was there as a spectator in Leeds last year. It was amazing. This feels like it took a massive jump up, largely because of the stadium announcer, but it was just
I'll probably write about it when I can get my head together. It still makes me feel emotional to raise that money, to raise that awareness, to see Ed and his family and Lindsay and the kids, and to have Ben there. Hamish came down the road. He's gutted that he played last year, didn't score a try, and then Ben plays and scores a try. So there's a fair bit of chat amongst the Weir family. Kathy couldn't be there, unfortunately. Yeah, mate, everything that's great about sport and the human race was there on Sunday, and I feel very, very privileged to have been part of it.
Well, yeah, great job. It was certainly good to see you on our TV screens. And obviously,
I'm told the cameras add about £10. I think there was quite a few cameras on me at the weekend, so it's time to get back to the gym. I think I need another marathon to run, because I didn't realise I had a fat back of the head. Like that's what happens when you wear your bow tie. Aye. Anyway, mate, great to see you. Let's come back next week and talk about a win against Argentina. Is that a deal?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Nice. A final word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News podcast was brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV right now. There are thousands of jobs across Scotland, and you can find the one for you, S1 Jobs. So go on, start searching. Have a great weekend, folks. Look after each other. See you next week.